Good afternoon. It's Chelsea McDougall. I'm the editor of Labels and Labeling magazine. I'm here with Duane Pekar. He is the president and CEO of Mark Andy. Thank you, Duane, for joining me today.
Hey, Chelsea. Good to see you.
You too, you too. So we've been having kind of an interesting discussion and thought it would be a good idea to do kind of a video conversation with us to talk about the ongoing global consolidation in the label and packaging market. And is it good for the industry? Is it bad for the industry? Who wins? Who loses? And how does Mark Andy respond? And I really think our readers at Labels and Labeling will be interested to hear kind of how Mark Andy views this kind of trend that we're seeing globally, really. So, Mark Andy's kind of always been at the forefront of a lot of industry shifts. How do you see consolidation kind of impacting label converters and the label industry in general?
Yeah, well, I think, and I've been in a number of different industries, Chelsea, over the years, and I mean, the idea of industry consolidation is not a new one, right? It's maybe relatively new to the converting industry. But I mean, it's many years into it now. I know there's many companies that are in their in some cases second, third, maybe fourth round of funding, or even have taken the step to go public. So it's here, it's not going away. So from my perspective, this is about understanding, embracing, and figuring out how to serve a shifting customer base differently. So, I mean, that's really kind of the perspective I'm trying to bring coming in. Um, I'm thinking about a number of different roll-ups that I've seen or been part of in the past, and it's a pretty dynamic situation, and it can, if you do nothing, you're surely to be left behind. I think that's probably the one key takeaway is you have to do something, you have to embrace and figure out the win-win between you and your existing and new customers.
Yeah.
I also think it's just a fabulous opportunity for these entrepreneurs who have, put their personal money, their family money, their, now maybe into second, third generations, gives them an opportunity to actually, you know, maybe cash out, take a little bit of money off the table, but maybe preserve that business in a way that's different than they had historically, but also an opportunity to, create some wealth for, for their families. So approach the right way, it can be a very, very good thing. There's
Yeah.
also some risks. Yeah.
Yeah. So in overall, would you consider this kind of consolidation a threat, or would you consider it more of an opportunity?
I mean, I look at it as an opportunity for Mark Andy for sure. If that's the question
Yeah.
about how Mark Andy views it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Um, I think it presents an interesting challenge though, okay, because um, depending on where the group is that is doing the consolidating, depending on where they are in their evolution, you may have to continue to do business the old way for a period of time, and then gradually shift into maybe more of a corporate approach where you have to understand more about where is the group going, where are they trying to optimize, what are their strategies and goals, and how can you support them in that at the same time as still supporting each individual. I call them rooftops, but where the converting actually gets done. And to me, it because it's shifting and it shifts slowly over time, I think a lot of companies, Mark Andy included, haven't really shifted with it. And we understand it now, and we have redesigned our sales organization to actually be able to do, I call it do both. This isn't about doing one or the other. This is about understanding um, every group that we do business with, what their needs are as a group, and continuing to serve those individual sites with the consultative approach that we always have done in the business, where we understand what it is they're trying to accomplish at the local level and how can we support those needs, whether it's productivity or growth or whatever level of change they're trying to affect. So it kind of gives us the best of both worlds, really, in terms of being able to come at it from two directions. And then, that might send us in a direction to develop new things for the groups that we weren't thinking about, that aren't even related to the machines. It might be completely other services that we can provide. And that's really the interesting dynamic that I've learned as I've gotten out and talked to a lot of CEOs that are responsible for groups now.
Yeah. I mean, in our past conversations, it's always struck me that that's kind of always been your kind of key message is listening to your customers and responding to what they need, meeting them where they are, right? Not telling them or, guiding them necessarily, but meeting them where they already are. So you mentioned the reorganization of your sales team and, kind of embracing the changes in the market. How is that reorganized sales team and how is that embracing these changes?
So fundamentally, and yeah, fundamentally, we are trying to reach every converter rooftop in the country. Okay. So that's kind of two pieces of our sales organization redesign. We have a regional sales structure now with it's roughly around 12 territories between the US and Canada that falls into our three regions, basically. And each of those territory managers is responsible for consultatively selling to every converter in their geography. Okay, that's a big change from Mark Andy, where we used to have overlapping sales forces with digital, Flexo, and our Rotoflex business, as well as our retrofits and rebuilds. We had these multiple sales teams calling on the same customers. And what that meant was, is you tend to only call on certain customers, the ones you know, the ones that like you, and the ones that are going to buy equipment, as opposed to, hey, we're servicing the market here, right? There's startups going on all the time. There's smaller converters that have different needs. How do we do that? So we built this regional sales structure and putting in place the ability for each salesperson to represent all of the products so they can truly go in, understand needs, and consultatively develop solutions with the customer that solve those needs most cost effectively given their starting point of equipment, their book of business, and what they're trying to accomplish, and then what we have to offer. And we have a wide product offering, and we can do a lot of retrofits on our equipment as well. So we kind of span the full spectrum, if you will, from pre-press to finishing of anything a converter might need to help, advance their business. And then in support of those regions, we're putting in place a sales operations team that has inside sales, so outbound calling. So we're touching every converter at some frequency in each of those territories and coordinating with outside sales so that we can do those follow-ups and develop those relationships kind of as needed, and as those converters are ready for our help in those markets. And then, proposal writing and sales funnel management will all be part of that as well. So that kind of takes care of each of those individual rooftops in a better way than we probably have in the past.
Yeah.
The other pillar we're building is we've got some of our most senior sales executives now responsible for the large groups that are forming in the country. Okay. And we have a couple of global groups as well, but initially we were largely focused on, the US groups that are evolving. And our team in Europe does a pretty good job calling on the groups in Europe right now as well, and they're kind of finding that balance, I think. But this is really this reorg was really the U.S. and Canada. So those three executives have a few. We call them groups. You can call them whatever kind of accounts you want, but they're any group of converters with more than 10 rooftops, call it something like that, maybe 5 rooftops. They begin to have different needs, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what their business strategy is. That's what we've learned. So that's how we've organized ourselves.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's kind of addressing as the consolidation that's happening in the industry is kind of it's organizing yourselves in a similar function, right? Because now you have those kind of managers, executives who are going to be managing those bigger accounts once you go from maybe a smaller mom and pop shop or a medium size or growing converting company, and then maybe they get purchased by private equity. Now they'll be kind of in a different group within Mark Andy, it sounds like. They kind of
Yeah, but at all times, though, no matter where those rooftops are, they will still be called on by one of those territory managers. So it doesn't change the model. It kind of adds to the model, if
okay.
you will. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
Right.
I think we have identified 12 or 13 groups that we are actively now setting up those top to top meetings,
Mm.
doing voice of customer work, and beginning to have more, one-on-one conversations with those CEOs, CFOs, COOs, just to understand their needs and to think about how can we help.
Yeah. Interesting, because it's always kind of struck me, and I've heard from people that say too that, they may have been working with person A from company A for years. Company A gets acquired. Now I don't know who to sell to or who my person is. I mean, is that something that Mark Andy's been witnessing over the years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And not only does it affect the relationships, it also changes the compensation structure. So we've fixed all of those kind of nuances, right? We're
Mhm.
adjusting the business for consolidation is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So those few key executives who are calling on those groups, they're not actually doing proposals. The
Mhm.
proposals still come from the individuals that are associated with where that equipment is going.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the model. Obviously, if you know, if the customer wants something different, we can adjust that model. But our intent is to continue to have those grassroots relationship at the front line and have a high level of coordination at the top with the group and whoever's responsible for those decisions, those investments, those evaluations, those kinds of things. And to make sure that, you know, everyone knows what's going on everywhere and I have a high level of communication so that we're better supporting the customer almost from the top. And I don't want to say from the bottom, but on the front line, maybe is the best
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, thank you for that insight into kind of how that function works. I want to shift a little and talk about the technology at Mark Andy. You had a great Label Expo Americas, lots of launches and exciting things happening there. Your booth was buzzing the whole show, it felt like. In terms of as it relates to consolidation, do you think what we're seeing in the market with this industry consolidation, is that going to accelerate, these technologies and innovation that's happening, or is that going to does it slow down during those times? What's your opinion on that?
I think if you do innovation right, um, that the pace of innovation um, it will pick up because you're engaged more deeply with these groups.
Mhm.
Okay. And call them strategic accounts. That's kind of the term that flies around inside our house a little bit. And I don't mean to imply that there's a lot of customers who aren't strategic, obviously, um, because we value all of our customers and our accounts. I think that the key, though, is that if you've got a large group that's trying to standardize on a platform and they've got certain strategies, it might be for an end vertical, it might be for their business from a productivity standpoint. They see the value in some level of standardization, but they also need to make sure that whatever they're standardizing on can accomplish a variety of needs, or probably a broader set of needs than you might find if you're just working with, one rooftop or one converter. So what it does is it'll allow us to understand those needs, integrate them into our development cycles so that we're focusing our development efforts, our innovation and technology on solutions that are maybe not just focused on, how to do the next interesting label or
Mhm.
application for a customer or for an end vertical, but maybe something more broad for that customer. And a couple things come to mind
Yeah.
as an example, making sure that, the machine monitoring platforms, the diagnostics that we have on our machines, they need to be more sophisticated. And when you're running a group with multiple sites, that becomes a little more complicated. So us being able to kind of step up in terms of that software, those software platforms, and making sure we can support some of those kind of needs as an example. Another example isn't even technology too, Chelsea. Um, one of the interesting needs we've found out as we've gotten out and talked to CFOs in particular, COOs as well, is that the first couple rounds, maybe round one and round two of consolidation, And by rounds, I mean we get funding, we go do a round of consolidation, maybe we buy 10 or so converters and spend a lot of time in the back office, you know, centralizing some reporting and some benefits and some payroll and taxes and quite frankly, all those things that, are a bit of a pain in the tail for um, entrepreneurs running a, converter shop. So the first couple rounds go pretty easy. You get to like round three, and now you're trying to find out, you can't just do bolt-ons. At some point, you got to actually begin to create more value. So these companies are hiring COOs now to come in and figure out, okay, what's my operation strategy across all these sites, right? And the CFOs are like, okay, so when we bought the company, we assumed some synergy on procurement or, supplies, equipment, whatever. But we have no way to measure that now because they're all on different ERP systems and we don't have that level of control, you know? Um, so what we found is that, like, for example, Mark Andy Print Products could come in and in a unique way of probably anyone in the industry, be able to go in and make a proposal to that CFO or COO to say, we could provide all of your supplies to all of your sites. You can negotiate best pricing. In exchange, we would like all of your business. And we will ship at this level of delivery performance, and we'll give you reporting every week, every month, every quarter, whatever you need, so you know what's going on in your operation. So we give them visibility to something that might be very, very difficult and challenging to do, repetitively until they maybe roll out an ERP system across their platform, which may be down the road or anyway. We've just learned that these are opportunities that are out there, and we have the ability to approach them differently. And those senior sales leaders that I talked about that are calling on these groups, they are as focused on equipment as they are on supplies for these customers because it's one of those unique value propositions that Mark Andy can bring to the table. I mean, we have a fabulous distribution center in Earth City, just outside the airport in St. Louis. I mean, we ship to a lot of converters every day, and there's just so much opportunity there for customers to get better pricing and probably better service levels and get better visibility and reporting as well. So we're excited about some of those possibilities.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm kind of hearing that it's not only just about like speeds and feeds and how fast this machine goes and how much you can print and what's your output. It's kind of that overarching kind of value chain, which I know Mark Andy's been really passionate and vocal about the partnerships and things that you have with across the value chain, both in-house and the people that you've partnered with. So it sounds like that's working really, really well for you.
It's starting to. Let me just say we're just getting started, you
Yeah.
know. But the possibilities are all there, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just so many different things that these groups are seeing, right? In some cases, they need to consolidate their footprint. Okay,
Mhm.
well, we move machines, and we can get them up and running probably faster than anybody else in the industry because we know how they run.
Yeah.
So we've helped a lot of converters do some consolidation, or if they're building a focus factory, or if they're trying to print any label anywhere, we can help them with color management and things like that so that they can consistently print on these pieces of equipment any place where they've got that machine in their network.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things we're hearing, and we want to hear more because there's more to learn.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, and I know we're really kind of just getting into the beginning of the year, so I don't know if you've seen or noticed a trend this year specifically, but even looking back historically, are you seeing any like shift in capital investment strategies among label converters, due to a lot of the M&A? I'm hearing a little bit of kind of both ways. Like there are people who are saying, okay, I just acquired 7 businesses. I got to pause. Or I'm getting ready to be acquired. I got to pause. Like, are you seeing any of that? Or is that just um,
I mean,
something
I
sure?
think it's safe to say that those are probably real situations, but I think they're relatively isolated.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I mean, how many converters get bought in a year?
Yeah.
10 or 12 maybe in the US, something like that. It might be as high as 20.
Hmm.
Um, I think in a lot of cases, we've actually seen the opposite, whereby, hey, this machine is on order and it's going to continue. In fact, we need it done for sure by this date because it's part of, what's being purchased as well. So,
Yeah.
I think there's probably a little bit of that going on, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's I wouldn't call it trend worthy.
Yeah.
No, I think
Good.
probably a dynamic that goes with, the situation.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And I heard one speaker recently say too that, setting yourself up for to be acquired is a good thing too, right? So you want to have the latest technology, you want to have those systems in place and be productive and show and make yourself more marketable if that's your route that you plan to take. So it's kind of just an interesting dynamic that kind of push and pull with that a little bit.
Chelsea, I think that's a great point. Um, I don't know very many groups that are acquiring poorly run companies.
Yeah.
Okay. But, I mean, sometimes private equity comes in, and if they're really trying to do value creation, they're going to look for things that, maybe have some opportunity for value creation that's maybe low fruit, like some operational improvements and things like that they see. But generally speaking, I think converters who want to be acquired do absolutely need to be focused on streamlining, improving, and investing. Because it will absolutely, if for no other reason than to help facilitate a sale, they'll probably make a little more when they do so.
Yeah.
Because they're going to look a little more progressive, and
Yeah.
and hopefully they'll be more productive as a result and things like that.
Yeah, it's like fixing up your house, getting it ready for sale, remodeling that bathroom.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I would argue though it's probably a little more than, just some of the window dressing you might do when your house is going for sale. These guys kick the tires pretty hard, a little more than probably the average home buyer does.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I want to turn a little bit to Europe. I mean, what are you seeing in that market? Is it similar to what we're seeing here in the US and how's Mark Andy addressing that?
Yeah, and I'm not personally as these not I haven't personally spoken to as many groups in Europe as I have in the US. Groups that are forming or growing or well underway. But what I do know from our sales team and our head of sales in Europe is that the groups are a little further along. There's fewer single rooftop converters left. So I don't know if the answer is it's 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead of the US, but it's the sense is it's ahead, which means that some of the things that US converter groups are going to need in the US, they've already figured out in Europe. So there's a fair amount of learning for us to do. So it's our intent to engage with as many groups as we can in Europe over the coming year to better understand some of those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with Label Expo Europe coming up, of course, the attention kind of focuses on that region with that show. One of the biggest in the world for the label and packaging industry. So I assume that, you'll be there having lots of these similar conversations with them. Is there anything you can talk about in terms of what we can expect in Europe from Mark Andy?
Yeah, yeah, I can actually. We're locking down our plans right now, but we will be at Label Expo. Our intent is to show a lot more than labels at the show. Let me make that a teaser. There's a lot of other things that converters, our core customers, are getting into. And we plan to demo that across this, a really diverse set of assets and equipment at the show in Barcelona. So we're really excited. Our planning's all coming together right now. So
Oh, good, good. Hopefully this video will surely be out before then, but a lot of people are quite looking forward to Barcelona. And then I guess what is kind of a final question is how do you see Mark Andy and its role in this evolving kind of industry with maybe fewer but larger converting groups?
yeah, I really do. view Mark Andy as a leader in both kind of sides of that, right? Because I don't look at this as there's going to be winners and losers. I think there's a real opportunity for a win-win for converters. Okay, it's a very entrepreneurial space. I can, and I mean, even a number of people who've sold their businesses are waiting out their non-competes and they're starting up again. And they're starting
Yeah.
up, and they're not starting out where they started out the first time. They're starting out where they ended, right? So they're a lot more productive and competitive and know how to raise money, know how to start up a meaningful operation. So there's those kind of dynamics that are going on. But I view Mark Andy as a company that will commit the resources to continue to understand what's needed, on the shop floor to be more productive and more effective from that pre-press to finishing, and to support our customers throughout the aftermarket as well. But then to also understand the evolving needs of those groups. Okay. And we're here to understand those. We're here to bring solutions. We're here to brainstorm ideas. We're here to form new partnerships if we need to bring those, services to the table as appropriate, and to really continue to, be a meaningful part of this industry, no matter where you are in that evolution from single shop to billion-dollar public company.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Duane, thank you so much. Really insightful. I appreciate your time and your insight for this conversation today. Was there anything else you thought I'd ask you that we didn't touch on?
Um, there's one thing that I think is really important, and this is maybe to, you know, maybe just in general to people that are kind of sitting in a chair like mine right now, where you're in the industry, you can either be afraid of consolidation or you can embrace it. I would encourage people that if you don't have experience in the private equity world, where value creation is very rapid and continual, and the types of areas where the groups are now being required to go, they're going to continue to get better and better and better, and they're going to need more help as they do that. Okay, and embracing that in a way that really does demonstrate partnership and understanding and flexibility, I think is really important. And beginning to kind of think like those CEOs, CFOs, and COOs, put yourself in their chair and try to think about the things that are keeping them up at night. And it might change your frame of reference a little bit so that you can kind of get into that game. It's not something that is really natural if you've kind of grown up in the industry and you're just not used to that private equity pace. I've been in that space now for probably the last 15 years of my career after some great experience at, some Fortune 100 companies that taught me a ton. And but it's a different world, and the pressures that these guys are under from the PE firms or whatever pace or goals they're after. They're going to move quickly, and not listening, not engaging, and not supporting will probably leave you behind.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing for you or your business.
Well,
So
that's great advice. And yeah, you definitely have that insight from working in that world for a long time. So that's excellent advice for our industry. Thank you so much, Duane, for your time. And we appreciate it.
my
And
pleasure.
you can see Duane and the Mark Andy team at Label Expo Europe later this fall. In the meantime, you can visit markandy.com for more information.